Awesome. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I'm an alcoholic. My name's Leah Clark. Grateful to be here alive and sober today, and grateful to do anything at all for Alcoholics Anonymous because it saved my life. And if Dan was the one that recommended me, I'm not sure, that you can trust that. Just kidding. Just kidding. And also, hi to Leslie Hummingbird. I haven't seen Leslie in forever. So uh, it's amazing how Zoom has gotten us friends from all over the world. And um, page 100 in the Big Book, which is one of my favorites, says, when we look back, we realize that the things which happened to us when we placed ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. And I certainly would not have planned the pandemic, but I'm very, very grateful for Zoom because it gives me an opportunity to go to meetings. So, as I said, I'm an alcoholic. My name is Leah Clark. My sobriety date is June 14th, 1996. So if I get to June 14th of this year, that means I will have 29 years of sobriety. But the really important thing is that it's only one day. So if you got up before 9:30 this morning Eastern time, you have more sobriety than I do because it's only one day. And I got in trouble with a sponsor one time for saying that when I was picking up a chip at a meeting. And they said, you can't say that. And I said, I can because it's true. I can't stay sober tomorrow on what I did today. It's only what I do today. So I'm supposed to tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So I am the youngest of 4 children, all girls, all having names beginning with the letter L, all 4 letters. So I had an identity crisis from the get-go because you never knew what name you were going to be called. I am the child of an alcoholic who I believe, not supposed to diagnose, but I'm pretty sure that my grandparents were alcoholics. Maybe they didn't go dancing in the street, but every day at a particular time they had their alcohol without fail. So I'm claiming it for them, and they are not here to dispute me. So there you go. My father died when I was about 4, and my mother's drinking escalated until she hit her bottom, which was literally falling down the cellar stairs and cracking her head open. But she was a stubborn alcoholic just like me. So it took that for her to go to detox. And when she came home, she was angry at the world. And I know that now. I know how that feels now, having my own sobriety experience. But at the time, I knew she was mad at me. I knew it was all my fault. I knew everything was my fault. And I'm a good alcoholic and a good codependent. So I took all of that on myself. And I was just sure that I was the cause of everything bad. So my mother got into the program, met somebody in AA, and that person said, hey, let's move to Florida. I'm sorry, I was born in New York State. And so we moved to Florida, had to uproot everything, leave everything behind. And I was still really confused as to where my daddy went. And now I'm with this new person who has no idea how to raise kids. But what I can be grateful for is that I was raised by 2 women in recovery, because I can only imagine how bad it would have been if they weren't. Because they were in recovery, we didn't have alcohol in the house. But the first time I got my hands on any alcohol, I'm sorry for the person who's listening to this recording, because I'm going to fall over myself. You'll just have to accept it. The first time I got my hands on alcohol was my eldest sister's wedding. They had a champagne toast, and my mom said it was okay. And I just remember grabbing that glass and drinking as much of it as I could, as fast as I could. There's some foreshadowing there because my drinking didn't change after that. Every time I got my hands on it, I drank as much of it as I could, as fast as I could. And so I remember that. The second time I had a drink, I was 13 years old and I was staying with my one of my other sisters and they were having a party and there was a cooler of Budweiser and a cooler of Shasta soda. So I grabbed a Budweiser and I grabbed some Shasta black cherry soda and I mixed them together. This is the point in the meeting where everybody goes, "Ugh." But let me tell you, it was ambrosia. It tasted so good. It went down so smooth and it filled in all the cracks in my psyche. I felt smart. I felt pretty. I felt like a grown up. And I just knew that I had arrived. Just like Bill says, I had arrived. And I didn't have another chance to have a drink until I was about, probably 17 or so. But I romanticized that and I told that story to everybody who would listen. I think, like I said, I think I was about 16 or 17, and somebody's brother got us a bottle of, I want to say it was California Cellars Chardonnay, the really cheap stuff. And for years, I thought that wine didn't taste good unless it had cork in it because nobody thought to bring a corkscrew. So we used a nail file and there was cork all in it. And we were watching the movie and the boy that I was with was got very handsy and very, he was just weird. And I didn't like that. I didn't like having him be out of control with me. I don't remember too much about how I felt. I just know I didn't like the way he was acting. And that foreshadowing, I seldom like the way other people act, even when they're sober. So I have opinions about everything. Um, and then I think the first time I got really, really, really drunk, my mom was out of town and somebody brought alcohol over. I met a very, very dashing pirate by the name of Captain Morgan. And all of the things that I said I was not ever going to do, I, if I'd had the opportunity, I would have done them. And the next day, I was so incredibly sick. And you'd think, now my current husband and final husband has a story where he got drunk and he decided he wasn't going to do it again. I got drunk. I couldn't wait to do it again. And so I did again, as many times as I could, as often as I could, as much as I could until I either ran out or passed out. And this continued for a very, very long time. I got into college. I got out of college because they don't like it when you don't show up for class and you don't do your work. And I decided that maybe getting married would solve the problem. So I got married. And maybe having a kid would solve the problem. So I had a kid. And the whole time I just thought, I I really felt like everybody else knew what was happening. Everybody else had the secret handshake and I wanted it, but I couldn't get it. So I just kept looking for the answer in the bottom of that bottle. And my first husband was 20 years older than I was, and in a wheelchair. And I used to joke that he couldn't run away from me, and that's why I married him. Um, when I had my daughter, I stopped drinking for about 3 months, longest 3 months of my life. And when I stopped nursing, then I started drinking again. And I was a stay-at-home mom. So I was supposed to be taking care of her. But that girl has legions of guardian angels because I wasn't doing very much taking care of anybody. And the day that I woke up on the floor, well, came to on the floor after a drunk with my daughter sleeping next to me on the floor, I said, I've got to do something about this. I need to go back to work. Never occurred to me to stop the drinking. my fixes were always about what can I do outside of myself. So I went back to work, and I was a very bad secretary at a place. Um, and somewhere along that line, my husband realized that my drinking was just getting really bad. And he said, if you don't stop, I'm going to take our daughter away from you. And I believed him. So I stopped. And I discovered that coffee in very, very large amounts would do a similar thing to me. So I totally transferred my alcoholism to coffee. And that worked for a little while. And I wound up getting a different job. And the girls were always saying, oh, let's go out. Let's go out and have a drink. Let's go out. And I said, oh, no, no, I don't drink. I'm not going. And I finally went out with them, and it was happy hour. So I got a double, and I took a sip and I went, oh, I've never done this before or since. I said, oh, it's too strong. And I went back to the bar and I said, can you pour some of this out and put some more mixer in it? And I thought, I'm cured. I don't like it. I'm not going to drink anymore. Or maybe I can drink normally. Wow. Self delusion much? So, you know the story. You know that it didn't take long for me to because the disease is progressive. I'd stopped for about 8 months, and when I started up again, it was like I never stopped. It didn't take me long at all, and I was drinking every day again. I was looking at that dead person in the mirror. I can see her. I can see that soulless being, and I just thought, I don't want to be here. And ever since I was a little kid, there was something in the back of my brain, a comforting thought. Sane people don't have these kinds of comforting thoughts. The thought that I had was, if it ever gets too bad, I'll just end it. That was my comfort. And you know what happens when you are in charge of the finances and you don't pay the bills? Things come due. People come knocking on your door. I was such an expert liar that I could explain away everything until the day that the Florida Highway Patrol pulled us over because we had expired tags, no insurance, and my husband's license was suspended. And I knew that that was the time that this is it. This is my sign to check out. And I tried it. I tried it, and it didn't work, obviously. But I was at that place where that was the only thing that I could think of to do. I sat down and I wrote this long note to my husband telling him all the things, the house is in foreclosure and all the credit cards were past due, and this is all that's coming for you, but I'm going away now. And the first thing that I wrote was, I'm an alcoholic. That was the first time I ever admitted it. And I was in my bathroom and I was already ahead, all of the implements that I won't bore you with, alcohol, pills, everything. And I stuck the note under the door, and I started about the business of checking out. And my husband came to the door at one point and said, are you coming out? And I said, no, I left you a note. And he read the note, and the coward called my mother, who lived next door, which is another story. But he called her, and she came over, and she was pounding on the door and saying, please come out, we can talk about this. And I said, no, I'm not coming out. And she left. And I thought, good, they're leaving me to die. Awesome. And then she came back with a screwdriver and started taking the handle off. And I thought, if you're not going to at least try to break the door down, I'll come out. And when I stood up and threw up, thankfully, I heard a voice say, if you want to help, all you have to do is reach out and take it. And I told my mother that night, I said, you have to put me somewhere where I can't lie anymore, because if I have the chance to, I will lie my way out of this. So they put me in treatment, but it wasn't really treatment. I didn't learn much about the program at all. Um, I'd grown up with my mom. I'd gone to meetings with my mom. I could have recited the 12 steps, but it didn't pertain to me, so I didn't really absorb it. And when I got out of treatment, one of the girls that my mom knew came and picked me up and took me to my first meeting. And I thought, this is going to suck. This is going to be stupid. I know what meetings are like. It's going to be forever. I'm going to be bored. And that 1 hour meeting went by in a flash because finally I heard people talk about how they thought like I did, felt like I did, drank like I did the dumb things I did. And I found acceptance in the rooms of AA for the very first time in my life. The woman who was taking me to meetings became my sponsor. Up until the fourth time, she suggested that I read the doctor's opinion, at which point I thought, nothing is happening here. And I found a new sponsor, somebody who had what I wanted. And she got me partway through the steps. But there was a bit of a stumbling block because, see, I left the first guy and then I met another guy in the rooms and started a 9-year 13th step when I was about 6 months sober, and ended up marrying that guy. And I was hanging out with him and going to meetings with him, and my sponsor at the time didn't think that was a great idea, and we fought about it a little bit. And then her husband got sick, and me, knowing nothing about sponsorship and how much it helps the sponsor when the sponsee calls and has something totally different than what they're going through to talk about, said, well, you go do your thing and I'm going to find somebody else to talk to. And I started going to a meeting, getting there just after How It Works and leaving just before the Lord's Prayer. Not sharing, not talking to anybody. I'm going to do this all myself. It's fine. I already know everything. It's great. I don't need anybody. Got married to that guy. And, he probably kept me sober because I didn't have the guts to go out with him and order a drink. So he probably did help with that. But I was house sitting. I guess I was about 2 years dry, 2 years in the program at this point. And I was house sitting for a friend, and I looked in their pantry and I saw a bottle of cooking sherry. And I thought, that's alcohol. And I'm by myself with alcohol for the first time in 2 years. What am I going to do? And I thought, I need to go to some new meetings and find a sponsor. See, I'd been going to this newcomers meeting, and there was this really crazy lady there named Cynthia, and she had a big book that she brought to every meeting, even when it wasn't a big book study, and it was all highlighted and everything, and it was falling apart, and she'd read from it, again, even when it wasn't a big book study. And I thought, she's crazy, but she had something that was attractive. And I kept hearing God say, go ask her to sponsor you. And I was like, no, she's crazy. I'm not doing it. So I started going to some different meetings, and I went to this Wednesday night meeting, and who was there but crazy Cynthia? And I thought, all right. I mean, it was on the other side of town. I'd try to go where I didn't know anybody, and there she was. So I asked her if she would help me finish my steps, because my second sponsor had gotten me, like I said, about partway through. I'd sort of done a fourth step, which is like being a little bit pregnant. You either do it or you don't. And I hadn't. I had not told her anything that I thought she would look weird at me for. So it wasn't thorough. Might have been fearless, but it sure wasn't thorough. And So I said, "Can you help me finish my steps?" And she said, "Well, honey," she's a little lady from Kentucky. Yes, the butter lady, Morgan. Um, she looked like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. And she said, "Well, honey, do you need to finish your steps or do you need a sponsor?" And I said, "I need a sponsor." So Cynthia became my sponsor. And we started reading through the big book. Now, I had told this man that I was married to, who was also in the program, that I knew everything there was to know. And I hadn't even cracked the book yet. And when he called himself a recovered alcoholic, I said, "You can't say that." And he said, "It's in the book." I said, "No, it's not." Imagine my surprise when we got to "There's a Solution" and it talked about, we have recovered. I was like, well, I need to make amends for that. So Cynthia and I started reading through the book and highlighting, and I wanted my book to look like hers, so I took it and I broke the spine so I would look like I knew more. Um, and we got to the third step, and we got on our knees in what seemed to me to be a very public place, and we did the third step prayer. But at this point, I was so broken down and afraid that I was going to go back out that I was willing to do anything. And if she'd have said, "Go out in the middle of that highway and get on your knees and say the third step prayer," I might have done it. I had the gift of desperation. I was willing to do whatever was necessary. And we did the third step. Now, see, I'd gone to a lot of meetings about the fourth step, and I'd heard all the horror stories about how terrible it was, and that I was going to have to really gird myself up to do it. But the funny thing was, after doing the third step prayer, something unlocked, and I was willing to do it. And I have a description of the fourth step, which is a good fourth step is like a stomach virus. Just when you think you're done, something else comes up. And she gave me 2 weeks to write it. She took the paper and she wrote, you know, "I'm resentful at the cause affects my." She made the paper for me and handed it to me, and I had to use that paper, and I had to write in those little columns, and I did. And when we got to column 3, she said, "Everything affects everything: pride, self esteem, personal relations, sex relations, security. Everything affects everything." And I had to look at all of these resentments that I had and how these were activating my character defects. And of course, there is a fourth column. It's not in the example, which one of these days I'm going to have a discussion with Bill and Bob about why didn't you just put all 4 columns in the example? It would have been so much simpler. But it does say later on about that. And that's my part. Now, the part in the book where it says, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. I thought that was utter crap because all these people were doing stuff to me. I didn't have anything to do with it. I didn't start it. Oh my goodness. When I sat down with Cynthia and did my 5th step and talked about all these people who I had stepped on their toes and they retaliated, I was like, oh, I guess I do have a part in that. Oh, I guess I did start that. Oh, holy cow. Who knew? It was all your fault. Now, when I point one finger at you, I got 3 pointing back at me. So I had to accept that I had started those things. I was in therapy, group therapy, when I was came out of treatment, and they were having this discussion about being self-centered, and I said, "Well, I'm a caregiver. I'm a caretaker. I take care of people. Is that self-centered?" And he said, "We'll come back to you." And by the time he got all the way around the circle and came back to me, I realized that, yeah, I was extremely self-centered. Now that didn't take, of course, because I hadn't done any work behind it. But I remembered when I got to my 5th step that I was extremely selfish and self-centered, and I did have a part in it. And when we got, oh, this is the other part I was going to tell you. When I'd done the first fourth step, there were about 3 things that I was taking to my grave I wasn't telling anybody. And here's this little, cute little sponsored, sweet little, Kentucky lady with curly hair. And I was sure that if I told her those 3 things that I was taking to my grave, she was going to throw me out of her house. But somehow, in the midst of doing that 5th step with her, I realized that if I did not tell her those 3 things, which I'd written on a piece of paper and stuck in the back, and so that I could get out of it if I needed to. When she stopped and said, "Honey, is there anything else?" I took a deep breath and I told her those 3 things. And I waited for her to yell at me, and she just laughed and she said, "Well, honey, I've done that." And she told me something worse that she had done. And I realized that I was not the worst person in the whole world, which was a huge thing. And we talked about step 6, which at that point, after looking at everything that was on my 5th step list, I was entirely ready to get rid of all of that. Yes, please. Yes, please. And we got on our knees and said the 7th step prayer. And I went home after that, and she gave me instructions about, took all the people from my 4th step list and made my 8th step list, and I wanted to put the really important ones on the bottom. And she said, "Well, honey, let's put your family up here and let's move this around." She did Jenga with it and moved it around for me. And I got to, I was going to be praying for my attitude towards those people for the next 2 weeks, because they didn't need me to pray for them. I needed to change my attitude toward them. And she gave me this really, really magic prayer. It's in the book somewhere. I couldn't tell you exactly where. Not in the first 164, I don't think. But the prayer was, "Dear God, please help me with my attitude toward all these people. Thy will, not mine, be done for them as you would have it for me." And see, that's where they get you, because I can pray fire and brimstone on people all day long, but if I add that other part, I only want good stuff for me. So if I'm praying good stuff for them, if I'm praying for my attitude toward them and for God to bring them all the good stuff, it's just amazing. It's a magic prayer. I cannot explain how it works, but if you're really doing it, I prayed that prayer for this girl that I hated. Oh my God. She was so little and cute, and she could sing, and I was so incredibly jealous of her, and she wasn't doing things right. And I prayed that prayer. I was assigned it for 2 weeks. I prayed it for 3 days, and I couldn't remember why I was upset with her. I couldn't remember. So just taking that action made the difference. And when it came to step 9, I had to be willing to go to people and tell them, to, there's verbiage in the book that works really well, and I'm not going to remember it verbatim, but we express our regret for being hard to live with. And from this day forward, I'll be the best whoever, employee, daughter, sister, friend, with God's help. And if there's anything I can ever do for you, please let me know. And I was willing to do that. And one of the greatest, not because I'm great, but one of the greatest examples that I have of how the 9th step works. Remember that first guy that I was drinking and house in foreclosure and spending all the money and all of that? I told you he was in a wheelchair, and he had contracted polio when he was 2.5. So he developed something called post-polio syndrome, and lived by himself because we weren't married anymore. And he would call me. He would call me at 12:30 at night, say, "I can't get into bed. Will you come help me?" And I would say, "Of course, I'll be right there." Of course, as soon as I hung up the phone, I would think, oh, I was just getting ready to go to sleep. I don't want to go, but I went because that's what I said I would do. And one of the things that I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous is that we become people who do what we say we're going to do. And by the time he passed away, I was the person that he trusted the most. Um, and again, that's not because I'm great. That's because the program works. And I was willing to do what I said I was going to do. I didn't just say, "Oh, sorry for all that, ruckus I caused." I did a demonstration of what I was willing to do differently. And when I went to my mom, see, I was convinced everybody hated me. And she told me how much she loved me and how proud she was of me. And I was like, "Are you talking about me? Are you sure?" Um, and I was so grateful. One thing that's also sneaky about the ninth step is you cannot game the system. I had a couple of financial amends that I had to make, and I went to the first one and they said, "Oh, it's okay. You don't have to pay it back." And I was like, wow, maybe that'll happen with everybody. And so I thought, I'll say I'm willing, but I really hope I don't have to pay this back. Yeah, I had to pay it back with interest. So if I'm not 100%, if I'm not 1,000% willing to do what I say I'm going to do, I'm going to get found out because God knows. And I I have experienced that because I'm a lazy alcoholic. If there's a way out, if there's an easier way to do it, I'm going to try to find it at first. And one of the other things that happened after that fifth step was that I was in my car driving to work the next day. And I thought, something's different. What is it? There's something different. I can't figure it out. I finally realized I didn't have the radio on. I'm a musician, so I'm used to having music on all the time. But the music in the car was to drown out the voices. And after that honest and thorough and fearless fifth step, I didn't have the voices anymore. And that was amazing to me. I started doing a 10th step. I started clearing up things before they got big enough to be on a fourth step. And the 11th step, doing the prayers that I needed to do, getting a connection with my higher power. And I tend to be a rule follower. I really want to be a rebel, but I tend to be a rule follower. And if I think something's supposed to be done a certain way, I'm going to do it that way. So I make sure I'm, on the winning team, so to speak. So I had a pretty warped idea of, trying to see what time it is so I don't talk too long. Oh, I still have time. And now I'm going to completely forget where I was. Step 11, I thought I have to make sure I do all the right prayers and make the right connection to the right God. And as time has gone on, my 11th step has changed completely from how it was when I first got here. I've realized that the connection is much more important than the words. And so I have a higher power that I can talk to now, that we have conversations. I say thank you a lot. I say thank you a lot. And I say I'm grateful a lot. And I say, please show me what my next step is to be, because I know you can see the whole maze, and I can only see the next turn. And that works for me. That works very well for me today. Now, if I talk to you a few years from now, it could be something totally different. But for today, that is working for me. And then we got through reading Working with Others in the big book, and I was still, working on my 9th step amends and very comfortable where I was. And this new girl came into the meeting one night, and Cynthia said, "Go get that little girl's phone number. She could be somebody you could sponsor." And I said, "Sponsor? I'm not ready to sponsor. I haven't even finished my 9th step yet." And she said, "Honey, if we wait for you to finish your 9th step, you will never sponsor anybody." So I went over and I got the little girl's phone number and gave her my phone number, and I was absolutely terrified. And uh, I don't think I sponsored her for more than about 5 minutes, but at least I was willing. And I kept trying. And I don't think I was very good at it for I don't know how long, but I kept trying. And I I was amazed because the thing that has absolutely made the program open up for me is sponsorship. Sitting across the table or the virtual table with somebody and talking about the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Oh my goodness. Everything I was looking for in the bottom of that bottle is right there. And that is the high that never goes away. It is the most amazing thing that I have ever been a part of. And I sponsor a number of people who are all different and all keep me on my toes in all kinds of different ways. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. Just a little more history. I divorced the second guy, that 9 or 10 year 13th step. And there were a few other people in between there. And at one point, here's the other part that you need to know about me is I not only have alcoholism, but I'm also diabetic. And my alcoholism tells me I don't have alcoholism, and it also tells me I don't have diabetes. So it says, my alcoholism says, "Oh, you can eat that whole bag of sugary candy. It's not a problem. It won't hurt you this time. Really, it's okay." I also have a very, very hard time asking for help. I mentioned the whole stubborn thing, and I think I did. And if I didn't, I'm sorry. I'm stubborn. I'm a very stubborn alcoholic. And I don't ask for help. I don't stop. There was a long time when I didn't sleep. I wasn't healthy. I was not taking care of myself. And I wound up having a diabetic stroke at 40 something. And I started losing my vision at the same time. And I got to the point where I had to ask for help. There was no other way out. And thank God for Zoom, because I have a little more independence now. I can sign onto a computer and go to a meeting and be with all of you other unapologetic weirdos, as a friend of mine said. It is the most amazing thing in the world, and I'm so grateful for it. And I was still working. I was working as a music director for an organization, and I wasn't happy. I also wasn't going to a lot of meetings. I wasn't doing a lot of step work with anybody. I was pretty much doing it on my own. And you know the story. You know how that works. And something absolutely terrible happened to me, and I know that you will all just be terribly shocked, but I got fired from that job. And I was sure it was the end of the world. But the same thing that has saved me every single time saved me again. I started going back to meetings. I found a home group that I could walk to. I was there every time the doors opened. I made the coffee. Um, I bought the cookies. I chaired a meeting. I got right back into the middle of the boat. And that is what saved me, because I was just sure that my life was over at that point. Oh my goodness, I've been fired. How will I ever show my faith again? And the program helped me get out of that mindset. Got me back in the middle of the boat. I started sponsoring again. I got so much help. It's amazing. People that need sponsorship don't understand how much good they do us as sponsors. I have a lady that I sponsor who is very unwilling to sponsor. And I said, just keep putting your hand up. It's okay, just keep putting your hand up. And she started getting sponsees. And she called me one day. She said, "Oh my God, it helps so much." I said, "I know. I know. What have I been saying for all this time?" But you had to experience it for yourself. And watching, not only watching the light come into somebody's eyes from doing the steps themselves, but watching the light come into somebody's eyes when they're doing the steps with another alcoholic. Oh my gosh. It's this whole, I envision it as being on the side of this mountain, and I'm connected to my sponsor, and my sponsees are connected to me, and their sponsees are connected to them. And we're all going up the mountain together. We don't have to do any of this alone unless we choose to. And then we come back because we don't like pain. So hopefully something I said tonight made some kind of sense to somebody. And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, Dan, for asking me. Um, Alcoholics Anonymous saved my life. My mother used to say, my sobriety is a gift from God, and what I do with it is my gift back. And it is a privilege to come and share anything with anybody in AA. And just in case nobody's told you they love you today, I love you to the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for my sobriety.